This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories. A breakthrough in Cameroon. A national dialogue with Anglophone representatives concludes, but do the proposals go far enough?
It was stage managed. So they were actually looking for spectators, not participants.
Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari calls a recent outbreak of xenophobic violence in South Africa an embarrassment to the continent. We find out how a new project is hoping to reduce newborn deaths in Africa through better technology. Also in the program, affirming African art as it's showcased on the international stage at 154's Art Fair, bringing together artists from the continent and beyond.
I think it's very, very important because it's one of the main stages, one of the main forums that discusses, that artists come and show at.
And in sports, a ruthless South Africa side thrash Italy to all but secure their place in the next round of the Rugby World Cup. Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. We start in Cameroon, where a national dialogue aimed at addressing the government's conflict with Anglophone separatists has concluded. And a range of proposals have been made, including the adoption of a special status for the two Anglophone regions, the reinforcement of bilingualism and reconstruction of the destroyed areas. Now, the two-year separatist uprising has seen fighting between rebels and the military, with more than 1,800 people killed during that time. Kilian Gala has been following events and has the details.
After 5 days of discussions, 500 delegates drawn from various backgrounds, namely lawyers, teachers, government officials, politicians, parliamentarians, have come up with what they believe are proposals that could lead to the resolution of the Anglophone problem, the crisis that has been rocking Cameroon's English-speaking regions for the last 3 years. The proposals will now be forwarded to the head of state for final approval. Experts say these resolutions are significant. They could mean more autonomy to the regions where people have a right to take part in their own development. Anglophones in the country have long complained about the over-centralization of power, saying that it deprived them of the right to hold their governments to account. That could change with the current arrangement. But the national dialogue isn't going down well with everybody. Just 1 day into the dialogue, one of the participants walked out, citing procedural flaws and the content of the discussions.
Well, I was enthusiastic about this national dialogue. I've been asking for it for the past 3 years. So I went for the consultations and I tendered certain points of what I think should be discussed. And we went now to the plenary session. And in the plenary session, I found out that, the speakers were prearranged. You could even ask a question. The commissions were prearranged. And it was stage managed. So they were actually looking for spectators, not participants. And so I thought that whether I was there or not, it would make a difference.
At a meeting that was aimed to bring all the stakeholders to the discussion table, there was a noticeable absence of separatist leaders. Many of them are still in jail. Many others are in exile, and they said they couldn't come, fearing they could be arrested or even killed. And all of that could cast a pall on the substance of the talks. Kilian Gala, BBC News, Yaoundé.
Well, I'm now joined by our Africa editor, Will Ross. Will, proposals have been put forward, but they are quite vague.
They are quite vague. President Paul Biya says he'll consider them, so they're not guaranteed to go through at all. But I mean, granting the Anglophone regions special status, who knows what special status really means? The fact that people will be able to elect their local governors and some other local officials. If that's approved, that would be a step in the right direction. But the problem is, many people who went to this conference and many people in the Anglophone areas, they've complained about years and years of marginalisation, being oppressed by the government in Yaoundé, and they want a degree of federalism. And as soon as they turned up for this conference, this meeting in Yaoundé, it was clear that that was off the table. The government had said, no way.
But who then attended this conference? Because the Ambazonia group and some opposition parties, they boycotted, didn't they?
Well, opposition parties, yes, and it gets quite complicated when we get into which politicians wanted to be there and weren't there. I mean, the key thing is no genuine representatives of the armed fighters were there. There were some people who were paraded who were supposed to have been former fighters, but there's quite a bit of scepticism in Cameroon as to whether they were genuine former fighters or not. And of course, the people with the guns are still out there in the bush. So you had people from the Anglophone areas, but as the delegate we heard a couple of minutes ago said, he felt that it wasn't inclusive because you turn up for a discussion and you're told, no, Mr. A and Mrs. B are going to speak and not you. Mm-hmm. So, and also a key issue, there was no external or neutral mediator overseeing this whole thing. And that seems to have undermined all the trust. And there is a huge amount of distrust between the people living in the Anglophone areas who feel they're being punished every day, really, as this conflict continues, and the government.
One of the issues that I saw doing the rounds on social media was the fact that when the announcement for this dialogue was made, that was the last we heard of the president. He never even showed up or showed some level of presence in this national dialogue.
Well, that's not, uncommon for President Paul Biya. In his late 80s, he very, very rarely brings the government together for any cabinet meetings. He's out of the country quite often, months of the year spent in Switzerland. So it's not surprising that, even the announcement that more than 300 prisoners were going to be released, that was a bit of paper that somebody read out on his behalf. So this is one of the key problems about the way Cameroon is run, the decision-making process. He's now saying he's going to look at these suggestions, he himself, not the government.
Will Ross, thank you for your thoughts. Thank you. Now let's take a quick look at other stories making headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. The Mali Minister for Defense, General Dembele, has confirmed that 38 soldiers were killed when jihadists attacked Malian military camps near the Burkina Faso border earlier this week. And the minister, speaking at the scene of one of the attacks, said 33 missing soldiers had been found alive. 8 of them are receiving treatment. And the attacks were eventually subdued by Malian special forces and foreign allies. Health workers in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo say the 1,000th person to have recovered from Ebola during the current outbreak has returned home. Now they hope survivors can persuade others who fall sick to seek immediate treatment. Police in Western Kenya say at least 13 people died when a late-night express bus collided with a truck on the Kisumu-Nairobi highway. Police say the bus was overtaking a cane tractor about 3 kilometers from the Awasi when the accident happened. Now, Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari has called a recent outbreak of xenophobic violence in South Africa an embarrassment to the continent following a meeting with members of the Nigerian diaspora in Johannesburg. He is on his second day of a state visit instigated by South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa in response to a souring of relations between the two countries. Nigerian-owned businesses, among others, were targeted in a bout of violence last month. Well, Milton Nkosi is in Johannesburg for us. Milton, today was meant to be what they call a town hall meeting with the Nigerians who live in South Africa, but it was all shrouded in secrecy.
Yes, Sophie, we were told they never used town hall. They said it was a family affair. So South African media were not really pleased that they were locked out, including international media. But there were some Nigerian media who were allowed. We now know what took place because President Buhari has tweeted about the meeting. We understand that there were about 40 people. It lasted for under an hour. Those 40 people were representatives of different diaspora organizations based here in South Africa, and President Buhari urged Nigerians to remember at all times that they are ambassadors of their country when they are abroad, and he asked them to use their international skills, talents, and knowledge and experience to help the development of Nigeria.
In your assessment, how successful so far has this trip been?
So this trip has been incredibly successful. They signed 32 bi-national agreements across the board, from technology, justice, energy, economy, culture. So it covered a wide range of agreements between the two countries, including tourism. And President Cyril Ramaphosa today visited South Africa's own Home Affairs department, where visas are issued, because some of the Nigerian business people yesterday at the business forum complained about the time it takes to get visas to come into South Africa. So this has, it seems like it has been very successful. And of course, the hatchet has been buried on the violence. Both presidents recognized the need for what they called mechanism or early warning mechanisms for warnings on potential xenophobic violence.
All right, Milton Nkosi, thank you for that update. Thank you. This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Still to come, a new African record in the triple jump and a first ever medal for his country at a World Athletics Championship. We hear from Burkina Faso's new sporting hero, Fabrice Zango. I'm Sophie Ikenya, and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top story on this program: a week of national dialogue that's aimed at finding a solution to the Anglophone crisis in Cameroon has ended. Proposals include the adoption of a special status for the two Anglophone regions. Now, having a baby can be a difficult, even scary experience, and whether a newborn survives its first hours and days can vary greatly depending on where in the world a mother delivers. According to the latest figures, Sub-Saharan Africa has the highest neonatal mortality rate at 28 deaths per 1,000 live births. Now, a child born in Sub-Saharan Africa is 10 times more likely to die in the first month than a child born in a high-income country. Now, the preventable illnesses that kill newborns include breathing difficulties, jaundice, infection, and hypothermia. But there's a new $60 million initiative that's being launched to supply affordable and robust medical devices to hospitals across the continent to help reduce the number of newborns who die in the first month of life. We are joined by Dr. Steve Adudans. He's a team leader for the Newborn Essential Solutions and Technologies project in Kenya. Thanks for taking time to talk to us on Focus on Africa.
Thank you.
What is this initiative, briefly?
Yeah, so like you just said, a lot of babies die in Africa out of preventable causes. And if Africa is to go with the same momentum that we have right now, it will take us almost 100 years to reach the goals that Africa as a continent has already committed to. And therefore, if we're able to just have good, robust technology that is able to withstand the environment in Africa, then we can take it to the next level, because African governments have already put in the basics of ensuring that we are able to reduce the mortality of newborns.
All right, I see there's something on the desk here.
Yes.
Would you explain briefly what it is about? And I can see there's a doll there representing a child.
Yes. So this is one of the technologies that has been invented in Africa for Africa. This is called the Pumani BCPAP machine, which helps babies breathe. Babies who were born before their time, preterm babies, it helps them breathe. And this device was actually invented in Malawi by a group of engineers from Rice University, together with Malawi College of Medicine. And out of this device, we've been able to see that a lot more babies can be saved.
So you've seen has there been impact since you launched
absolutely,
it? Okay.
Absolutely. And
I'm curious, though, because in the past few years, we've seen reports of progress when it comes to preventing deaths of newborns.
Yes.
I mean, there are various countries that have been doing pretty well.
Yes, absolutely. Because Malawi is one of those countries that has had tremendous progress when it comes to reducing newborn mortality. And in this program, what we're doing is that we're focusing on 4 countries, and that's Malawi, Tanzania, Kenya, and Nigeria in the first phase, because these countries, they bear a bigger burden of newborn mortality in Africa. And with deployment of such robust medical technology, coupled with training, because training is also one of the things that we want to look at, and then also looking at having an ecosystem for innovation, because this was developed in Africa. So Africa can actually innovate and have devices that actually can be used in Africa.
So which countries, is this free? How are they, that's a question that most people are asking. Which hospitals, and are they available freely, so to speak?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're looking at having this in at least 54 facilities, public facilities in these 4 countries. And what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate how these devices, one, can they be deployed in a manner that is sustainable, cost effective. 2, can we have an ecosystem for innovation, that we can have similar devices that can help babies survive? And the third thing, we want to look at the market forces.
All right.
The market forces that enables this device to be maintained effectively in Africa.
I have to cut you short because you know how it is with time, but thank you very much indeed, and all the best, really, for taking time to talk to us on Focus on Africa.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. Let's find out what's happening in the world of sports, Peter.
Many thanks, Sophie. Now, South Africa have produced a dominant display to thrash Italy 49-3 at the ongoing Rugby World Cup in Japan today. The Springboks scored 7 tries in all and now top Pool B with 10 points, having played 1 more game than group favourites New Zealand. South Africa have never failed to reach the quarterfinals of the World Cup, and they all but erased that possibility at this tournament with a display of controlled brutality at the Shizuoka Stadium. But head coach Rassie Erasmus says they are not playing at a World Cup winning level yet.
Yeah, no, I think we were clinical, because they're a great contesting team at lineouts. I thought lineouts were great. I thought scrums were great. I just thought our discipline were terrible the first half. We conceded 6 or 7 penalties when we were defending, but otherwise the defence was great. So I think overall not a bad performance, but obviously not World Cup winning standard yet.
Football, and Chelsea boss Frank Lampard has backed Tammy Abraham to score regularly for England after his impressive start to the season for Chelsea was rewarded with a call-up to the national side. The 22-year-old was named in Gareth Southgate's squad for this month's Euro 2020 qualifiers in the Czech Republic and Bulgaria. Abraham had flirted with switching his international allegiance to Nigeria, a country he qualifies for through his father. Lampard is in no doubt that Abraham has the attributes to be successful with England.
I think it's well deserved. You know, he's scoring goals regularly. For us, everyone knows his form's really good. I think he's been in the equation probably for Gareth all season because of how he's played. And natural progression for him. Delighted for him. I know he's a proud lad, and as he should be, proud to get a call-up.
Some sad news now, and former Nigeria striker Isaac Promise has died at the age of 31. His American club side, Austin Bold, said he passed away on Wednesday night, but offered no explanations as to the cause. Promise was captain of the Nigerian side that won a silver medal at the 2008 Beijing Olympics. He spent much of his career in Turkey with Trabzonspor among his former clubs, and also had a brief spell in Saudi Arabia with Al Ahly. Now, earlier this week, triple jumper Fabrice Zango won bronze at the World Athletics Championships and set a new African record of 17.66 meters in the process. It was also Burkina Faso's first ever medal in the competition. He's been speaking to the BBC.
I worked really hard to win this bronze medal. It goes straight to my heart because I worked really hard for it. I was fourth and I came third at the last push. I gave my own color to this medal. It is a bronze medal, but for me, it is gold. I started in 2011 when my sports teacher could see that I had potential to develop my speed because at school I was the fastest. In Burkina Faso, you have to know that at this point, nobody knew about athletics. Before 2017 and all the years before, we'd never had a world-famous star. There was nobody who could show that an athlete could be big. This meant that when I told my friends I was going to do athletics, all of them thought it was a joke because they had never seen an athlete from Burkina Faso to prove it. So that's what I did, and now everybody knows about athletics in Burkina Faso.
Brilliant stuff. Now, how about this for the one who got away? Last night at the ongoing World Athletics Championships in Doha, Bahrain's Salwa Eid Nasser won the women's 400 meters in 48.14 seconds, the third fastest time in history to claim gold. Nasser had not lost a 400-meter race since Monaco in 2018, but still wasn't the favorite for this race. She didn't let that faze her, though, and ran a controlled race to beat pre-race favorite Shanae Miller-Uibo. Now, here is something you might not have known. Up till 2014, she represented the country of her birth, Nigeria. But the 21-year-old switched allegiance to Bahrain that year. I guess you could say Nigeria's loss is Bahrain's gain. Sophie, that's your sports.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Now, 154's Contemporary African Art Fair is back in London. It provides a platform for many African artists and diaspora to showcase their work under one roof. Lisa Marie Mishtak went to find out more.
154's Contemporary African Art Fair has kicked off its 7th London edition. Art from emerging and established African artists has been spread across 45 galleries. 154 is seen as a gateway into the art world for many who take part, such as British Ghanaian Godfrey Donker, who has been displaying his art at the fair since its launch.
I think it's very, very important because it's one of the main stages, one of the main forums that discusses, that artists come and show at, that artists meet artists, that curators come. You know, London in October is all about art and everybody passes through 154.
This year's art fair is showcasing works of art from over 140 African and diaspora artists to give them more visibility on a world stage, as it's estimated that over 18,000 people will visit the fair. As well as art sold during the fair, it also aims to bridge the gap between those living on the African continent and Africans in the diaspora by bringing their works of art together under one roof.
We realized that, also the artists from the African diaspora in different cities where we're traveling had no representation or were not included in all those international art fair or on the international stage, in museum, in international collection. So for us it was important that, whoever had, that feeling that they belong with this African heritage, they had to be heard and be part of 154.
So this for me is a very crucial.
US-based Afro-Latina artist Furele Baez is displaying her art for the first time. She feels that the fair is the only place where all artists of African heritage can connect.
There's always either the African American contingency or the Caribbean contingency or the European, or there's pockets, but they're never all in one space speaking to each other, where you can go and travel all the continents and see the artwork that's been in conversation through other means, but in one space.
In a world where works of art can sell for tens of millions, prices for African contemporary art are relatively low, ranging from $3,000 to $300,000 US. Fairs such as 154 help give artists the spotlight needed to promote their work to greater numbers. Lisa Marie Mishtak, BBC News.
Well, don't forget you can get in touch with me and some of the team on social media at Kenya. Well, that's Focus on Africa for now. Thanks for your company. Bye-bye.